Hey friend, Graham Cochrane here. If you could go from making $3,000 a month, working around 40 hours a week, to earning close to 7 figures a year by working only 5 hours a week, would you be interested? I think most people would. In fact, that's the story of my business, The Recording Revolution, over the last few years. And while it might seem like a stretch or a little bit of a fairy tale, but what it really is the result of is in large part due to a methodical application of what's known as Pareto's principle, more commonly known as the 80-20 rule. In today's video, I want to unpack a simple strategy you can use to harness the 80-20 rule in your business, to free up your time so you can work less while at the same time increasing revenue. So let's dive in. First, we have to unpack 2 secrets about work. Secret number 1 is not all of your work activity is worthwhile. And secret number 2 is working more hours does not lead to more revenue. Now, if you're like, whoa, all of that sounds like nonsense, you're gonna have a hard time unpacking the rest of this video. So let's chew on this for a little bit. Someone's got to tell you the truth, and that's going to be me today, that not everything you do in your week, when you come into the office or when you're in the business or when you're at work, not everything you do is worthwhile. Now, I'm sure you're doing it because you think it's worthwhile, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But the truth is, most of what you spend your time doing, most of what I spend my time doing in my business is a giant waste of time. And on the flip, the other secret is that just working more hours doesn't lead to more revenue. And those people who don't know these truths about work fall prey to the hashtag hustle myth, and they commit themselves to the only strategy they know, which is working themselves to death. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for myself. What's beautiful about the 80-20 rule is it gives us an elegant and powerful framework, a new perspective actually, that can be used to free us up to work less and increase revenue. And it starts with a simple premise. 20% of your work activity, 20% of the things you do in your business lead to 80% of your revenue. So 20% of what you do in your business leads to 80% of your income and sales and revenue. It's that 20 to 80 relationship. Now, it might be more like 15-85 or 10-90. The specific ratio isn't really what matters. It's more of this disproportionate result based off of the strategic things that you do. And you see this pattern all throughout nature, but especially throughout our businesses. Now, to make 80-20 work for you, we want to ask ourselves 2 questions and then generate 2 lists. Question number 1 is very simple. I want you to sit down and ask yourself, what are the 20% of the things that I'm doing in a given week that actually lead to 80% of my frustration, my overwhelm, my stress? What are those few things that just lead to all of my frustration in the business? If you can identify those things, it's great. Set them to the side. Question number 2 is the flip. What are the 20% of the things that I do in a given week? What are the 20% of the things I do in my business in general that lead to 80% of the income and the sales and the revenue? Now, this might take some digging, but this is part of putting on your big boy pants, putting on your big girl pants, and being a CEO, being an owner of your business, not just running around and doing all the things, pausing for a moment to think about what are the strategic things. What is the 20%? Not all my work activity is worthwhile. That's secret number 1 about work. So what are the 20% of the things that I'm doing that actually lead to 80% of my results? If you can identify those 2 things, what you do is then use them to populate 2 simple lists: a to-do list and a not to-do list. Clearly, the 20% of the activities that are leading to most of your sales and revenue, they go on your to-do list. These are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that you need to be doing all the time because they are the money makers. They drive the business. They move the needle. They push the boulder up the hill. They are the strategic things. And you can ignore just about everything else. And the other 20% of the things that lead to most of your frustration and most of your overwhelm and most of your anger in the business, those are what you should not be doing. And by seeing those on a list, you can be reminded to not do those things. You've already articulated that they're not worth your time, so avoid them at all costs. Now, if you have these 2 lists, you're ahead of like 80% of the rest of the business owners in the world. Most people don't stop to do this type of analysis. Most people have no clue what their 20% is and the good and the bad. Now, I'll give you an example. For me, early on in the recording revolution, on my not to-do list was be in email all day. I was spending hours in my inbox responding to emails. Be on Twitter. I would get lost on Twitter just scrolling through, and I loved Twitter. I love seeing all these things, but I would find myself losing 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes gone, and I didn't even realize it while I was just looking at some NFL update on my Twitter account. And then customer service. Hated customer service, not because I don't like my customers, but because I started to go brain dead answering the same questions over and over again and always handling the same issues over and over again. It got really monotonous really fast. So those became my not to-do list, the things that were draining me the most and not leading to sales or revenue. On the flip side, the things that lead to revenue in that business, very simple: blogging and creating videos on YouTube every single week. That content, as you've learned from content marketing, that's what generates traffic to my site, which leads to sales while they get pitched my product. So creating that content every week, the number one thing I could be doing. Number two, pitching to my list. Offering them great products and services to my list is kind of obvious. When you pitch it, you make sales. And then number three is creating content for my membership community. Over there, if I'm creating content for them and interacting with them and doing all the stuff there, it keeps members around longer and it keeps that recurring revenue coming in every single month. So those were my three that I put on my to-do list. Now, pro tip for you, if you want to go all out, take your not to-do list, literally the bullets of things you should not be doing anymore, put them on a sticky note, stick it to your computer monitor or on your desk right where you work. So you visibly see it and it's facing you down every day, holding you accountable, reminding you, don't do these things, don't do these things, don't do these things. You want to take it a step further, grab your phone and set 2 to 3 alarms to go off throughout your workday that bring up the text that says this simple question when the alarm goes off. So you pull up your phone, you see your alarm, and it asks you this one simple question: am I being productive or just active? Am I being productive or just active? Put another way, you could ask yourself, am I inventing things to do to avoid the important? Like I said before, most people aren't going to be honest with you, so I want to be honest with you. Most of what you do in a week is just a waste of your time. It's not leading to business growth, but it feels good because you're active. You're doing the things. You're doing maybe all the things, but most of those things don't make a difference. So if you really want to increase revenue and reduce your workload, you have to have the honest conversation with yourself. Am I being productive or am I just being active? Okay, final thought. After you've done your 80-20 analysis, you should have identified the 80% of things that just need to be gone, the things you don't need to be doing anymore. Well, what do you do with those things? Well, there's only 3 things you can do with them. You can eliminate them, which is my favorite, automate them through online tools or computer tools, or delegate them. Eliminate, automate, or delegate. That's it. Those are the only 3 things you can do with that 80%. Now you want to start in this order. Eliminate first. Most of what you do is a giant waste of time, so there's no reason to keep it going anywhere in your business. There's no point in hiring someone, paying someone to do something in your business that doesn't lead to revenue, that doesn't grow the business. Because in essence, you're giving someone money to do something that doesn't grow the business. You might as well do that yourself instead of paying someone to do the pointless work. So eliminate is your first choice. Always, always choose to eliminate if you can. If it's something that you can't eliminate, you absolutely can't eliminate it, then try to automate it. A good example of this for me was an email autoresponder I had where I would have people email me in and I created a one-time email that I wrote that responded to them and said, hey, thanks for this email. I appreciate it. Look, I'm really busy creating amazing free content every week to put out for you to help you with your music. So I can't be in email as much as I'd like, but here's some of the top questions I get in email every week. Maybe this is your question. If you're looking to learn how to do this, check out this video series. If you have questions about what equipment to buy, check out this free guide I have that walks you through my best recommendations. If you want to know which products to use, check this thing. If you have a question about your specific product you've purchased, don't worry, my assistant will get back with you. This autoresponder email eliminated so much of the busyness in the inbox for both me and my assistant. It helped them, it sort of solved the problem, and it was completely automatable. Don't need to pay anybody or anyone to do this one thing. And the absolute last resort is if you can't eliminate it and it's not something that's automatable, then you just pay someone to do it. You outsource it, get it off your workload, and move on with your life. It's worth noting, however, that when you start to eliminate and get rid of this 80%, chances are that you will lose some revenue. Because again, this 80% probably was contributing to some of your bottom line in some way. So if you eliminate it altogether, revenue could go down a little bit. But look at what you get in return. You get your time back. Now, what this means for you practically is if you now have eliminated 80% of the things, you've just got the 20% that really matters. You could choose to double down on that 20%, do twice as much of that 20%, which could lead to double the sales, but in less than half the time you were previously spending on everything combined. You see what we did there? 80/20 just gave us a way to double revenue by working half the hours. It's elegant, simple, beautiful, and powerful if you weave it into your business. So my friend, I want you to do an 80/20 analysis at least every 6 months for 2 reasons. 1, things might change and it's worth reassessing and reevaluating every 6 months. 2, we get off track. I'm a great example of this. I know my 80/20, I know my to-do list, not to-do list, but after 6 months, I start to veer off course, I start to drift. And I need to be refocused and re-challenged to eliminate more and get back on track and just focus on the 20% that matters. So do one every 6 months. And as you're seeing, this idea of being able to earn more by working less isn't really a fairy tale. It's actually very possible if you commit to this process. And if you do it, I promise 2 things are gonna happen. You're gonna upgrade your quality of life and your bank account. So now I wanna hear from you. As you've been thinking through this 80/20 thing, during this video, maybe you've thought about it before in the past. What is your 20%? What are the 20% of things that you do in your business that lead to 80% of your sales or revenue or income? Can you identify 1 or 2 or 3 of those things right now? If so, why don't we begin your 80/20 analysis right now? Leave a comment below this video and let me know what those 20% are. I'd love to jump into the conversation with you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing to these videos if you enjoy them, and I will see you on another video real soon.